what's up, everyone? Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. I'm back with another client interview for you guys. And today I am really excited to have Panachai on with us. Uh, Panachai is someone that we've been working with for the last almost 1.5 years. So he's been with us for a while. And he's come, I gotta say, you've come a really, really long way from when you first started to where you are now, which, I'm sure we'll dive into that. But this is like one of the things that I enjoy the most about my job and what I do is, sometimes you see candidates come in and then like everyone for the most part improves as long as they do the work. But sometimes I feel like you see a candidate come in and then they have like, I feel like it's like more transformational, right? And those are the ones where it's like the most fulfilling for me as a coach because it's like we obviously we love getting our clients amazing results, and in this case I would say it's fair to say that Panachai really did get an amazing result. So anyway, I just wanted to get him to come on here and talk to you guys today because I think for a lot of you out there, whether you realize this or not, like uh you probably also need to undergo like a similar transformation if you want to break into an industry as selective as investment banking, right? And I don't mean that in like a bad way or anything. It's just like getting into investment banking is very, very hard. So anyway, Panchai, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. If you don't mind, just introducing yourself real quick, like let our audience know kind of like who you are, what your profile is, and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. So I have to say, my background, I come from a very unique background. So I was actually born and raised in a very small fishing village in Vietnam. So I did not come from a lot of means and I did not have a lot growing up. And this really forced me to really work as hard as I can to help my family get to a better situation. So I ultimately left Vietnam at the age of like 11 to go study abroad in Singapore for a couple of years. And then I used kind of that, what I've learned there, to study at USC. And I am currently a business student at USC. And with this past recruiting cycle, I have got offers from RBC, from SVB Securities before they went bankrupt, and I signed with Centerview Partners in Menlo Park. So very exciting for me, I guess.
Got it. Got it. That's awesome. So I think we cut out a little bit there, but just to recap, um, what you said was you got three offers, right? You got the
Yep.
RBC offer, you
Yeah.
got the SVB offer before they
Yeah.
went bankrupt. Although I think the offer was still good after that, right? But it's just like obviously
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was a little bit iffy. And then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, the offer you ended up accepting was the Centerview offer with their tech group. So you exclusively recruited on the on the West Coast, sounds like,
Yes.
because
Yes.
you go to school on the West Coast, obviously.
Yeah. And I also really like tech, so there's no reason for me to go to the East Coast or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So like how old were you when you came to the States then?
I came to the States, I have to say, in my junior year or sophomore year of high school. So I don't know how old that is, probably around like 15, 16.
You said senior year of high school?
Sophomore and junior year, yes.
Oh, sophomore or junior year of high school. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. And so like let's go back to first of all, congrats on an amazing offer because like I mean all of those are really good offers, but like the Centerview offer especially, I mean that offers is extremely difficult to get. So major props to you on that. Like if we go back to kind of the and actually before I even go there, because I think you were telling me this before, but like just to give people an idea of how hard that offer is to get, like what were the stats that you were sharing with me again on like kind of what the acceptance rate is over there? It's like less than 1%, basically, right?
Yeah. So after I got the offer, I spoke with an analyst on the team and he told me he had to pick around four people and there were around 500 applicants. And he told me that most of them are from like really good schools, like Ivy Leagues and like Stanford, UC Berkeley, UCLA, like all of the target school in the West Coast, and also some of the Ivy folks who decide to want to do tech in the West Coast also. So I
Yeah.
had to compete with like all those people, which is kind of crazy.
So they have 500 applicants. They ended up hiring 4 people, basically. Is
Yep,
that-
yep,
okay,
yep.
gotcha. So yeah, so that's about 0.8%,
Yeah.
which is feels in the correct ballpark for a top end elite boutique and or bulge bracket firm. So that's like around the same acceptance rate that we see for firms like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Centerview and things like that. So very, very competitive and the bottom line. Um, and then like funny enough, like out of the 4 people they hired, I guess it's you and one other person in Wall Street Mastermind, and then I guess there's 2 other people, but we don't know who they are. But so I'm pretty proud of the fact that we're able to get 50% of the spots in the office. So that's a little humble brag for me, I guess. But okay, so let's dive into kind of like your journey though of like how you got here because um you joined, I think, in like, around it was like around Thanksgiving of like 2021, right? We're sitting here now, mid-April of 2023. So like I said, it's about 1.5 years ago. Um, had you done anything for investment banking recruiting prep prior to joining the Wall Street Mastermind, or and if so, like what were you doing? Or like was Wall Street Mastermind kind of like the very first time that you kind of decided to, work on investment banking recruiting?
Yeah, so given my background, we did not know what investment banking was at the
Mm.
time. So I started thinking a little bit about the industry. I started reading like Wall Street Oasis. I took a look at some of the Wall Street prep material that some of the senior people gave to me. But looking at all of that, that was not going to be enough because I am, from an international background and there's a lot of stuff, going against me. And I feel like I needed a bit of a competitive edge, which is the first part. And I feel like there's just so many nuances, in recruiting that a lot of the general advice out there does not really fit. So you really need someone with expertise and someone who has gone through like thousands, hundreds of case studies of students to provide, the best advice that you can use to take the best step forward. And, that was what I was looking for when I joined Wall Street Mastermind.
Okay, so that's kind of like why you decided to join Wall Street Mastermind. But basically, you had done to recap then, because I think for some reason we're having technical issues and there's a little bit of lag. But you're saying that you basically just did your own reading online on like all the major, it's all the same stuff that everyone reads. You read Wall Street Oasis, you probably read like Mergers and Inquisitions, you just like do
Yeah.
your own research basically. um and then by international background, are you saying like, are you actually an international student who needs visa sponsorship, or are you just saying like international in the sense of like you didn't grow up here in the States, you come from a different culture, and so like which of the two are you kind of referring to, I guess?
I'm referring to the second one because I'm fortunate enough to have a green card, which, makes everything easier.
Yeah.
But coming from, a background not that doesn't fit very well with what people do here in the United States and all the cultural differences, all that stuff make it very difficult for me to, network and do all that kind of stuff. So
Hmm. Gotcha. Okay, you're just saying like you didn't grow up here in the States,
yeah,
and like your upbringing also sounds like it's very different because like you grew up, like you said, in like a small fishing village in Vietnam, which is probably not something that people here can relate to. And so like when you're talking to bankers or trying to network and
yeah.
whatnot, like there's less commonality, or
Mm.
there's less things you can kind of use to naturally build rapport off of. Is that kind of what you're referring to?
Yes, yes, that's exactly it.
Okay. Okay. Um, that's very interesting. And so I'm sure, we'll talk more about that in a second. But so then coming back to what you were starting to talk about, which is like, that was actually the next question I was going to ask you, which is, hey, what made you want to join Wall Street Mastermind? So it sounds like you felt like there's so many nuances to recruiting, and so you need someone who's worked with, hundreds of students and has seen all the different types of, scenarios and situations, and can therefore allow you to leverage that experience for your own situation. But like, what are, I guess, like, what are some of the, is there like one example of like such a nuance where you felt like, hey, this, like, if I just try to figure this out on my own, like, I wouldn't be able to do it, and I need someone who's more experienced to help me with that? Like, is there something more specific that you can kind of pinpoint, or at least like back when you were thinking about this? Because like, obviously, like, you know I think going back to what you were saying before, like, you being born and raised in a small fishing village in Vietnam, and I think like your parents, they still live in Vietnam, right? Like, the standard of living in Vietnam is like very different from the standard of living here in the States, right? And so, like, needless to say, and I remember speaking to your dad back when you guys were first like deciding whether to join this program or not. And I know, like, just like it is for a lot of our other students, this, it was like a very large investment for your family, right? And so I'm sure like this wasn't a decision that you guys, you know, took lightly.
Yeah.
And you guys always had to talk. I'm guessing you guys had to talk about it a lot and thought very seriously about it. And then, like, now, and now this was a year and a half ago, so we didn't have some of the offers that we had now, right? Like, we had the money back guarantee, but like, which is nice, but we didn't really have, for example, now we have like the income share option, which is kind of like our way of doing financial aid, which I'm sure like back then for you probably would have been very attractive if we had it, right?
Yeah.
But like, we didn't have that back then. And so, like, just walk us to, in fact, what was that decision making process like? And like, talking to your dad about it, I'm sure your dad had a lot of concerns and maybe even skepticism, right? Like, so take us behind the scenes of like how you guys worked through all that and how you came to this decision, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess I spoke a lot with my family about it. At first, I have to be honest, they thought it was a scam because no one actually guarantee an investment banking offer given how competitive it is.
Yeah.
So that is the first part. But I actually did like a lot of research into what is it exactly that you guys do and how is it that you can have, all these people receive amazing offers. And I talked a lot with my dad about it. We did some research online. I spoke with like an upperclassman who also received an offer, who also went to the program, check his background, all that stuff. And ultimately, we decided that I really wanted to go into investment banking because I really like the field. And ultimately, I want a lot of support. And I would say that I need like unlimited support, 24/7 to really adapt to life in America and networking, culture, and all that stuff to
Mm,
best position myself to get like a top tier offer, which, was what I was going for.
gotcha. Okay. So bottom line is, that's funny because I think when you joined was like right around the time when we first started doing the money back guarantee. And like, the rationale for doing the money back guarantee was because like we knew we had a great program, but like there's all these people online that like say, "Oh, this program must be a scam," without having ever done the program. And then so we're like, okay, well, let's put people at ease and just offer a guarantee, and that way like people can feel more confident that it's not a scam. But it's funny because you're saying that for your dad, that actually had like the opposite effect, where he's like, "Oh, this is too good to be true," so it must be a scam. And so it almost like actually worked against us, I guess. Um, but regardless, though, it sounds like there was a lot of skepticism.
Mm.
Um, but the way you overcame that, or the way you helped your parents overcome that, was just by doing a lot of your own due diligence, talking to people that have actually gone through the program. You probably went through like all the information on our website, like, and
Yeah.
verify that they're real people, and just got comfortable around, like, basically like really do your research and use your own critical thinking skills to determine like if this is real or not. And then like once you felt like it was real, then you felt good about this being kind of what you were looking for, which sounds like it's just like, hey, unlimited unlimited support on demand from the time you join and all the way until you get the offer. And you just, it sounds like you just felt like, given your profile and background and where you were coming from, you just wanted something that was going to be very hands-on
Yep.
and very customized and personalized to you,
Yep.
essentially. Okay.
Yep. Definitely.
Got it. Okay. Um, that makes sense. So then you came in, obviously. Um, let's talk about like what happened after you joined. So like you, I mean, you've been here for a year and a half. There were so many things that we did during that time. But I guess like from your own perspective, what do you feel um like what do you feel like was most helpful, I guess, for you? Like what made the biggest difference for you? And it doesn't have to be one thing, it could be multiple things, but like what were the things that you felt like really made a difference? And obviously, you know, you came in wanting a lot of support, or that was your mindset. Um, do you feel like we met the expectation, or did we exceed the expectation, or did we fall short, or kind of like how did everything play out relative to what you expected coming in? Because I feel like a lot of people, until you've actually gone through the program, it's really, really hard to visualize what the program is like. But but you probably have some level of expectations, like I think this is what it's going to be, and then like this is what it turned out to be, right? And then so like talk about that a little bit. Like, what did you do in the program, and like how did that help you get to where you are today? I guess.
Yeah. So I guess to be completely honest, I thought coming into the program, you have this amazing network of like MDs, and then I'll just get interviews, right off the bat and all that stuff. But I realized that that was not going to be the case. And I really need to change a lot before, I can get a top tier offer and all that stuff. So when I first joined, I'll be completely honest, I kind of slack a little bit because I overly relied on the program. I thought that, oh, if I just go through the module and do all the stuff as advised, then I'll probably get a top tier offer. What I did not realize is how much work actually goes into the program.
Mm,
Because you guys, I think your program doesn't turn lazy people into top tier candidates. They turn people who are good and hardworking and are willing to be coached into like top tier candidates. And I think that
mm,
is the main differentiating factor that I have not realized when I first joined the program. So when I first joined during my like fourth last year recruiting cycle, it did not work out really well for me. I managed to get super days with a couple of firms, but I didn't manage to convert an offer.
mm.
And should I continue, or should you do you want me to?
No, yeah, go ahead. Keep going, and I'm sure I'll have questions. But
Yeah. So like when I first recorded last year, it did not work out well for me because I thought I'd just go through the module and everything would be okay, but that was not the case. I really need to put in more work. I did not do enough networking, all that stuff. I did not do everything the program, advised me to do.
mm,
So that's why I failed. And around that time, my family did not end up doing very well. So I had to end up taking a gap semester.
mm,
And that really put me back into the swings of things and allowed me to recruit again for the next recruiting cycle. And I did not take, a gap semester because I wanted to recruit again, but it was because, my family couldn't afford and I had to do it.
mm,
So with, more experience under my belt, I decided to, get more internships, do everything that you guys asked me, and even went beyond. I asked a lot of questions in the technical group chat, and I tried to answer a lot of people's questions also. And that really forced me to think really critically about what is it that is being tested and how can I present myself better? How can I network with people better? And all that effort, accumulates. And ultimately, I ended up with a pretty good offer that I'm happy about.
wow. So I think you bring up a really good point, which is this is not some like magical silver bullet where, you know, I think a lot of people get I mean, both students and parents get the wrong idea about the program. Where, like, I mean, I was just talking to someone recently who like tried to join the program, and so he like put down like a small deposit, and then we let him into the program. He's like, oh, I just need to move my money around uh from he's from New Zealand. He's like, I just need to move my money around from my New Zealand bank account to my US bank account. And we're like, okay, sure, like do that. And then he came back, he's like, actually, it turns out that my New Zealand bank account is, under my parents' bank account, and like they don't want me to do this program. And I asked him how come, and then he said, "Well, my dad thinks that like I should, like if I can't get this job on my own, then I don't deserve it." Or like basically like if I do this program, then it's basically like he's cheating, right? Like he didn't like earn it himself. And the reason why I bring this up is coming back to your point. I think a lot of people have this idea that like, oh, by paying for this program, then what you're doing is like you're buying your way into this job and then you just don't have to do anything, right?
Yeah.
Almost like probably what your mentality was coming in. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, if I just come into this program, then like I'm just gonna get meet a bunch of managing directors. I'm gonna get a bunch of interviews, and I'm just like walk into, I just like walk into this job, and it'll be so easy. In reality, it's like nothing could be further from the truth, right? It's like
Mm.
you still have to do all the work.
Yeah.
It's just that like investment banking and recruiting is so hard that there are so many people out there who do all the work and still don't get in, right? Like if you look at the people that try to break into investment banking, like all the people that didn't end up getting in, can you truly say that it's because they didn't try? No. There's so many kids who try so hard and they have a good work ethic and they work their butts off, and they just didn't make the cut. I mean, you talked about it. Like out of 500 people that applied to Centerview's tech group, like 4 people got jobs. Like, does that mean the other 496 people just weren't trying? Like, of course not, right? So, like, and most of these students, like you said, go to really, really good schools. Like, they've been great students their whole life. They know how to work hard. They didn't get to where they are without working hard, right? And so, like, the point is not like, oh, like if you join this program, then you know how to do the work. The point is like, hey, if working hard is the bare minimum. Like
Yeah.
if you can't even work hard or you're not willing to do the work, then program or no program, like nothing's really gonna matter.
Mm.
But like if you're gonna work that hard regardless, why not get the help you need to make sure that all of your efforts don't go to waste, right? Like
Yeah.
to make sure that like for the same amount of effort that you're putting in regardless, you maximize the chances of you getting an outcome, or you maximize um like the level of offer that you're gonna get, right? Because not all offers are created equal. Like even the offers that you got, like an FVB offer versus an RBC offer versus a Centerview offer, like those are all different level, right? Like if you didn't get the Centerview offer and you only had the other two, like you would have still got an offer, but you probably wouldn't be. I mean, you would be happy, but you wouldn't be nearly as happy as you are now,
Yeah.
right? For various reasons. And so, but I think anyway, like the point I want to make is just I'm so glad that you had that realization of like, because a lot of people, I think, like, and to your credit, a lot of people, if they come into the program with the wrong mentality, where they think like everything's just going to fall into their lap, and then that doesn't happen. I think human nature, like not everyone, but for a lot of people, the natural response is to think like, oh, it's the program's fault. It's not a good program.
Mm.
That's why I didn't get a job. That's why I didn't work. I think it's more rare for people to be introspective and think like, oh, actually, like it's not the program's fault. I just didn't do anything they asked me to do, and then go and like actually change that, right? But like honestly, I think like you having that type of introspection is a big reason why you were able to have the success that you had, right? Because, and I always encourage everyone too, is like ultimately at the end of the day, like that's called taking ownership, right? Like all the successful people I know take ownership of the outcomes that they get, meaning like they only focus on the things that they can control and they don't focus on the things that are outside of their control, right? And so the things that you can control is like how hardworking are you, like how resilient are you, how coachable are you like actually doing the work, are you showing up, so on and so forth, right? Which I think like obviously you did that. And then like the thing about like having to take a gap semester, obviously that wasn't like something that you did on purpose. It was almost
Yeah.
like That's an amazing story too, because it's like started out as an unfortunate situation, I guess, because I mean, it sounds like you guys went through some hard times and literally, I mean, USC is an expensive school. It
Mm,
sounds like you guys just like literally couldn't afford to go to school during that time, but then you didn't kind of like you didn't have like you just like sit around and feel sorry for yourself or like have like this victim mentality. It's like, oh, I'm like, I'm sure you have a lot of classmates at USC that are like come from super wealthy families and don't have to deal with the stuff that you had to deal with, right? But like instead, you turned that into I don't want to call it crisis, but you turned that unfortunate situation into an opportunity. And it sounds like what you did was during that gap semester, since you couldn't go to school anyway, you went out and did an internship instead.
yeah, internships. I did like 4 internships during my time taking
Wow.
a gap semester. So yeah.
Okay. You did 4 internships. Holy. Oh, because it was like a 6 month period, I guess. Or
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
okay. Um, and so like you did 4 internships. Obviously, your resume became way stronger because of that,
yeah, yeah.
right? And then you said this time around also you decided to network a lot more, whereas like the first
Mm.
time around you didn't really network. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I guess when I first joined the program, I saw all the modules and stuff like that, but I was kind of afraid of, networking with professionals because I think that I didn't learn enough. There's just like imposter syndrome, I guess, in a way. And
Mm,
I really learned to overcome that. When I took, a gap semester, I know I stopped feeling sorry for myself and just pick up the phone and call people and
mm.
just send out a bunch of emails. So yes.
So let's talk about that, right? Because I think like that is something that a lot of students I think experience. I mean, regardless of whether they've done the program or not, but like you said, imposter syndrome. Like, what do you mean by imposter syndrome? Because it sounds like that stopped you from networking. Is it like you just didn't feel confident enough to be able to go out and have these conversations with bankers that you didn't know? Is it that I don't know, you felt like you weren't qualified enough and if you had these conversations they were going to go horribly or is it like the cultural thing that you talked about where you felt like, hey, I didn't grow up here, I come from a totally different upbringing, like English is not your first language, like all these things that make it scarier or more intimidating for you to go out and network, or like what do you mean by imposter syndrome, I guess?
Yeah. So I guess it's a combination of all those factors. So first of all, I know that bankers are extremely busy people. So I was afraid that if I take up 30 minutes of their time, then they might, I don't know, disapprove of me or something because again, they're very busy people and they might not gain anything from speaking with me and sharing their experiences. So that was
Mm,
one of the key points. Other than that, I think there's also the culture aspect where the way we speak to, seniors in my hometown is very different from how professionals talk to each other here in America. And I feel like I'll mess up something and make like the false impression of them and ultimately, waste both of our times. So I guess that was the reason why, those are the main reasons why I was afraid to network in the first place.
got it. There was a little lag there, but I think the last part you said was on the cultural aspect, the way that you would speak to like a senior banker here, or even probably any banker for that matter,
Yep.
is very different from how you would talk to people back home.
Mm.
And so you just felt like that's something that you didn't really know how to do or had to get used to, basically, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So, so,
Definitely.
so then, okay, you got over this mental hurdle, obviously, this time around. It sounds like, I mean, was there anything you did to, or like a mindset shift that you had that made you finally put yourself out there? Or was it just like, hey, like I have this second opportunity now that I had this gap semester and I know last time it didn't work. So this is my last chance. I'm just going to make the most of it. Or like, how did you get over that hump? Or like for our audience, like if they're feeling the same level of anxiety on around networking, like how would you give them advice to like shift their mindset or overcome that?
Yeah, I so I think that college is the only time where if you reach out to other people and have them share their experiences, then no one will say anything because they know you are just a college student reaching out, seeking advice and stuff like that. And I also realized how much people love talking about themselves. So if you just be genuinely interested in other people, then and ask them like thought-provoking questions, then this will make the conversation much more pleasant for the other party, and
Mm,
this creates like a positive feeling. So I got over that hump using those tactics, and ultimately I look forward to this calls now because everyone is so nice, so genuine, so willing to help, and you just need to ask the right questions and be interested for them to truly share their experiences and be helpful for you.
gotcha. Okay, that's awesome. So then like, sounds like you got over the networking hump. You started doing a bunch of these calls. You obviously built up your resume with all the internships that you were doing during the gap semester. Um, and then like those two things combined, obviously, like they help you. Those are the only two things that really matter when it comes to getting selected for interviews, right?
Yeah.
So did you feel like you had a much easier time getting interviews this time around than last time around? Because you had like you recruited basically 2 years in a row, and then so it's probably like very easy to do a comparison, right? Like, what did you get a lot more interviews this time around?
Yeah, so last time I think I got around 3 interviews, but this time around I got like 8 interviews, eight first round. And I had
Wow,
to drop out of some of them because I already signed with another firm. And that's a combination of my resume, which is very, very strong, and also me networking, me being proactive with all my reach out, and of me building myself to be someone who is pleasant to talk to. So people are more willing to help me. And this
yeah,
allowed me to land, much more interviews next time around, this time
yeah,
around.
okay. And would you say like the networking, the things that you were doing on the networking side to like get people to be more willing to help you, like how did you learn how to do that, or like how did you figure out like what you needed to do there? I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess when, the first instinct of people is to hop on a call and let the conversation flow naturally. But the program actually teach a framework for you to frame your thoughts and to ask the right questions. Because I also try to, take calls where I just follow the flow. But I realized that if I ask random questions, then it's kind of hard for the bankers to organize their thought process and not give you a really good answer. So the framework really allows you to allow the banker to structure the thought process to answer your questions easier, but also for them to provide the best advice for you and for them to like you as a candidate. So that is what the networking framework that the program teach me, and it's very valuable in my opinion.
Gotcha. So you're just talking about the ideas framework that we tell you guys all to use, which is like a 5-part conversational framework, like to like not like exactly what to ask, because obviously every conversation is
Yep,
different, but more like the types of questions to ask and then like what order to ask it in. And then
yep,
that gives you like a nice flow to the conversation where it progresses naturally to, and then by the end of the conversation, obviously the conversation went well. The hope is that the banker will proactively offer to give you the referral without you actually having to even ask for it. Right? Is that what you're referring
yep,
to?
yep,
Okay.
yep. Sometimes that's happened, but you gotta follow up even more times for them for a lot of other people.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So like we talked about like all the things you've done to get more interviews. I mean, to have 8 first rounds, I mean, that's really, really good. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would kill to have 8 first round interviews. Aside from getting interviews though, obviously the other big part is like being able to pass the interviews and being able to ace the interviews, right? So like obviously
Yeah.
you got to multiple super days, you got multiple offers, and so obviously whatever you were doing is working. Um, what did you do on the interview prep side of things? Or like what was most helpful to you when it came to like the behavioral prep as well as the technical prep?
Yeah, so I think there are two parts to that question. So there's the technical prep, and the program has an amazing module where they speed run through all the concepts you need to know. But I also realized that that is only, the foundation of what I'm learning if I'm trying to get like top tier offers. So I went to the program and I really thought deep about the material. I look at a lot of other resources online. Then I consult the coaches in the program, and they were able to provide me with a framework about how to think about the answers, how to get an attuned understanding of all the questions, and that allowed me to achieve a very deep level of mastery about the content. And on the
Mhm.
behavioral side, I think there's a lot of introspection that's needed. So you really need to dig down about yourself and think about what makes you differentiate yourself from a lot of other people. And the program also provides you with a coach for you to refine those answers and make them as organic and as genuine as possible. So when you say these answers, people will think like, wow, this candidate is so amazing because he has, think really deep about what makes him so different. And I also rehearse a lot my behavioral answers, so it comes out more naturally also.
Yeah, gotcha. So on the behaviors, I mean, on the technical side, it's like you said, it's like there's a finite amount of, there's an infinite number of questions they can ask you,
Yeah.
but there's a finite amount of concepts that you actually need to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's actually about learning the underlying concepts and not about like memorizing answers to the questions, right? Because if you're trying to
Yeah.
memorize the answers to specific questions, you'll run out of time. Like there's you never finish memorizing every possible question they could possibly ask you, right?
Yeah.
On the behavioral side, though, um, yeah, you talked about like deep introspection. I think that's like something that's like easier said than done for people, right? Because like, what does it mean to have deep introspection? It's like, okay, yeah, like really think about things I've done. Um, but like once you've done the introspection, or like maybe you have ideas about, hey, these are the answers I want to use, or these are the stories I want to tell. Where the coach comes in is like helping you package that in a way that's going to be more attractive, or uh, basically tailor it to fit better with what bankers want to hear, or like what bankers are looking for, right? I think
Yeah.
like a lot of times that's the part that a lot of people are missing, is that they know what they want to say. You can almost draw like a Venn diagram. It's like there's like what you want to say, and then there's like what the bankers want to hear, and then the two circles where they overlap is like you want to get that middle part, and that becomes like the crux of your answers. But a lot of people, they only have the first circle, which is like these are what I want to say, and then they don't know the second part, which is like this is what bankers want to hear. So they can't find that overlapping region in a way, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So can I add a little bit onto that?
yeah,
Yeah, so I think most of the coaches here are bankers, are people who are really successful, and some of them even led know exactly what people want to hear. And I think that most you cannot get this insight by networking with upperclassmen, because what has worked for them might be very different from what will work for you. So having all this expertise and having people who have gone through case studies of all these students know what worked well for banks, and they're able to modify that formula so that it fits well to your experience. And I think that's what it's really valuable about the behavioral section that the program helps.
gotcha. Yeah, you cut out a little bit there, but I think what you said was just the difference between the advice you can get from coaches who have actually been bankers, and a lot of whom have actually like led the recruiting processes at their banks, is going to be different from like just the advice that you get in school from upperclassmen, which that's actually a good point, because a lot of people also ask like, well, I'm just going to get help from the seniors at school who have already gone through recruiting or whatever. I think the difference is like the senior at school, to your point, like, yeah, maybe they got an offer from themselves, but like they've just gone through the process one time, right? Um, does that mean that what they did is going to work for you as well because it worked for them? Like maybe, maybe not. And also, someone who's just done something one time isn't really all that much more qualified than someone like you who's doing it for the first time, right? Versus, like, ideally, if you want to get coached on something, whatever it is, like you want to learn piano, you want to learn how to cook, you want to learn how to shoot a basketball, whatever, like, are you going to go to someone who's just like, has done it one or two times more than you have, or are you going to go to someone who's like a professional, basically? Like that's kind of the difference, right? Like the level of feedback that you get is just going to be different. And also, I find a lot of times too, what people run into when they just like get help from their friends, even like older friends, is that they're your friends. And so like one, like they're not gonna take it as seriously because it's not actually like their job to help you get a job. Like obviously they want you to do well, but like at the end of the day, they already got their job, you know, and then like this is kind of like your problem, not theirs. But the other thing is like sometimes people also just like feel bad. Like when we're giving you comments, if we think your answers suck, we'll just tell you it sucks, right? Like we don't care about like, oh, are we gonna hurt his feelings or whatever. Like in our mind, like our job is to be as critical as we could possibly be because we just want you to be better, right? Whereas like your friends might be like, I don't think this answer is that great, but then it's like, oh yeah, it's pretty good. Cause like they don't want it to
Yeah.
be awkward, right? Or they don't want to like feel like they're being mean or being a jerk by saying like, dude, like this answer is horrible. But like honestly, like that's what you actually want when in this situation. It's like you don't want someone to just like make you feel good and then you go into an interview thinking that your answers are great when they're actually not. Like you want someone to give you constructive feedback so that you can fix all those things before you actually go in the interviews, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So I guess like with all that said, um, you go through these processes, like I mean, Centerview interviews are known to be like notoriously weird and difficult, right?
Yeah.
So talk to us about that experience a little bit. Like what was it like interviewing with I mean, without like giving away anything like confidential or that anything you can't talk about, but just like at a high level, like what was that experience like?
That has to be like the most nerve-wracking interview I've done in my like recruiting process for the past few years. So it was like a 4 hour interview where I have to meet with 10 different bankers. So each room has around two people. And they hit you off the bat with some like off the guides, crazy technical question. They also hit you with like brain teasers and mental math. And they really force you to say who you are and have a good like why Centerview answer. So the interview is definitely very unorthodox, and I feel like even I have prepped for like 2 years already, and I barely managed to pass the interview. So it was really hard, I guess.
Mm, okay. So when you say very unorthodox, like I think maybe the brain teaser part is somewhat unorthodox, right? Because I think like not most firms nowadays, I feel like don't really ask brain teasers. But aside from the brain teasers, like was there anything else that was like unorthodox about because when you say like, hey, they make you say who you are and make you have a really good why Centerview answer, when I hear that, I'm thinking like, well, don't most firms ask you that question anyway? Or like, is there anything they're doing that you felt like was more than what other banks are doing, or like different from what other banks are doing, or like even on the technical side, like, is it just that their technical questions are just harder? And like, if they're harder, like, how so or in what way? Because I understand there can be harder questions and easier questions, but like the technical concepts are, like I said earlier, it's the same concepts, right?
Yeah.
So like, what made it so much harder? I guess.
Yeah, so for the technical side, you have to apply the concepts to real world situation. And this is something that you cannot do if you cram the concepts overnight. So if
Mm,
they ask you to, I don't know, value why is an industrial company doing much worse now than like a high growth tech company, that is something they just ask that question. That's something you cannot answer if you don't have a good graph of the concepts. And
mm,
beyond that, they also ask you very intuitive questions that you cannot prepare for. So they'll ask you to explain depreciation or WACC to like a car mechanic. So you need to tailor your answer to these different scenarios and be able to provide a good answer and dumb things down so that it's very understandable for a car mechanic, for example. So the technicals are way harder.
so they
And
said they asked you to explain depreciation and whack to what?
to a car mechanic,
Oh, a car mechanic. Oh, to a car mechanic. Okay.
yeah,
Oh, as if you're talking to a car mechanic who knows like
yeah,
nothing
yeah,
about finance. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So the technicals are a lot harder. And for the behaviors, they put you in very interesting scenarios and they want to see how you react. And
Mm,
this is something you cannot fake. This is something you cannot have a prepared answer for. You just have to know yourself very well and give an answer that you think they will be happy with all that you know. So,
mm,
so I guess it's a bit of a conflict too. And the thing about Centerview is that they are so selective and they can hire all the best people, right? So they want to be able to work with someone who they will have fun with. So being able to portray yourself as a genuine, fun, and caring candidate definitely goes a long way. And I think I became like that type of candidate because I've done, all these mock interviews and I become very accustomed to speaking with bankers about my experiences and about my background. And that
mm,
was what allowed me to portray myself very well. And I think for people who have not gone through, those mock interviews, will not have the capacity or, the behavior to portray themselves that way, even if, they are that person.
gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think like to your point, one, I think Centerview just has a really unique culture. I mean, their reputation is they have one of the best cultures on the street. So I think I think they definitely have like certain things that they look for in terms of like candidates that fit that culture. And um, I think their interview is designed to um, basically optimize for finding people that they think are good fits for that very Centerview like culture, right? And so I think like everything you're telling us now about their interview is pretty consistent with what we've heard from past students that have interviewed with Centerview, which is that it's very unorthodox, which really catches a lot of people off guard. And so I think like even a lot of these students that make it to their super day from these top schools, great resume, great GPA, great everything, um, and you just get stumped. And then also like to your point, it's like the way they ask their behavioral is if you're just the type of person, like even if you're super polished, but you just like saying all the things that you think they want to hear or whatever, I don't think that's what they're really looking for. I think like they can tell when someone's like being genuine, like actually like truly being themselves, or if someone's just like being fake and saying what they think the bankers want to hear, right? And like being the strategy of like being fake, even though you're super polished, is probably not going to work in this instance, right? Um, so anyway, that's really insightful, and I think like probably a topic that a lot of people are really interested in because obviously everyone considers Centerview to be, one of the top firms out there, and it's it's almost like this mystical creature, like everyone
Yeah.
wants to work there,
Yeah.
but very few end up making it in. I mean, and their intern classes are so small, right? I don't know, like I mean, with a lot of these elite boutiques, it's like they hire a couple dozen people every year, and that's it. So it's just like relative to the overall investment banking candidate pool, it's really really hard, right? Um, I guess one last question for you, because I know we're running out of time here, but what's I mean, you've already given so much advice, but like if I ask you for like one final piece of advice that you can give to people who are recruiting now, it could be anything, but like ideally, maybe something that you learned or realized along the way, or maybe it's a piece of advice that someone gave you before that like really helped you tremendously or really like made a big difference for you. Is there anything like that that you want to just, final words of wisdom that you want to kind of pass down to other people that you think will really help them out? Is there anything like that that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Number one, start networking now because I network way too late. And the more I network, the more I led to interviews and the more it allowed me to better talk to bankers. Like
Hmm.
that networking alone has transformed me into someone who was awkward and shy to someone who's more confident and who's able to articulate his thoughts way better.
Hmm.
And the second thing I want to say is that when you're doing investment banking recruiting, you really have to change yourself in all aspects. it really forces you to become a better person in a way, because it forces you to have better time management skills, better like learn how to manage like work, recruiting, and all the stuff you have going on in college. You have to learn how to be more presentable, how to talk to people more fluently, how to portray yourself as someone who's genuine, who's very interested to learn about the other person. And you really have to change yourself to be a successful candidate. You cannot treat investment banking, recruiting like a part-time job. It has to be a full-time job where you have to transform yourself for the better. And
Mm,
I think those are the two key insights that I took away from all this recruiting stressful time, I guess.
yeah. Um, that's such a good point, by the way. So, I mean, first of all, like on the networking point, a lot of people don't realize this, but networking is really just like another form of interviewing. It's
Mm,
like it's like an interview because you're still talking to a banker and they're still evaluating you, but it's lower stakes because you're not in an actual interview, right? And so the way I like our students to think about it is like every networking conversation you have, regardless of whether you actually get a referral or you don't get a referral or whether it results in anything, you're just putting in the reps.
yeah,
It's just like going to the gym. Like you want to become super buff, like you got to go to the gym like consistently, right? Like week in and week out. And every time you go to the gym, you're gonna get a little bit stronger, and you're not gonna like see this huge difference overnight. Like you don't go from like skinny kid to Arnold Schwarzenegger like overnight, but if you keep doing it, like you can't. It's impossible to not get better.
yeah,
It's impossible to. And you say like you transform from someone who's like awkward and shy into someone who is like way more articulate. I 1,000% agree with that. I think like I kind of alluded to this at the beginning when I was introducing you. I was like, I saw you go through this transformation, like because you were like the awkward and shy kid when you first came into this program, right? And like that's not. And there are a lot of like awkward and shy kids out there, honestly, I would say, and that's not. Just being completely honest, like awkward and shy is not like the profile that bankers are looking for. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And so
yeah,
like it's okay if you're awkward and shy now, but if you don't want to stay awkward and shy, like if you don't like that about yourself and you want to change, then like that the only way to change that is to force yourself to go step out of your comfort zone and to put in the reps, right? And I think that like there's no other way. Like and that really like segues into your second point, which is like yes, like technically what you're doing is recruiting for investment banking, but also actually what's happening while you're going through that is you're just trying to turn yourself into a better person. Like it's you're trying to improve yourself in so many areas simultaneously. You're like and you're getting better time management skills. You're learning how to handle stress better. You're even increasing, your technical skills. You're increasing like your understanding of yourself, like going through the introspection and prepping your behavioral answers. Like there's so many things that you're doing to make yourself better. You're getting more relevant experience, becoming a better candidate on paper. Like all these things, it's not easy. Like it's not easy to improve. It's not easy to grow. It's not easy to like just become better. And if you are doing it like half-heartedly, like if it's not like if you're not giving it 100% of your time and effort, and it's not like your singular focus, typically like the students that we see that are really successful with investment banking recruiting, like is their number one priority above all else, right? And you know how you can tell if something is your number one priority is like if you tell me how much time you spend thinking about something, I can tell you how important of a priority that is, right? Like we do this thing now where we make all of our students time block. We call it time blocking, which is like block out how much time they're spending on everything they do each week, and then we can look at their calendar and see like, okay, this week I spent whatever 20 hours in school, 10 hours at my job, like 5 hours of networking, 2 hours of interview prep, whatever. But like that gives you a very visual way of seeing like, hey, what percentage of your time is actually going towards like investment banking recruiting? Like sometimes like we have people like spend like an hour or 2 hours a month in total on recruiting. And like
Yeah.
if that's what you're doing, then like it's very, very obvious that this is just not that important to you. Right. Like if
Mm.
out of 168 hours in a week, which, like in a month, I think there's like 720 hours or something. Out of 720 hours a month, how many hours are you dedicating to this specific goal, to recruiting? Like, is it
Oh,
10 hours, 20 hours, right? Like, I'm not asking you specifically. I'm saying, like, as a retort, because I know you spend a lot of time on this, but I'm saying, like, for the people in our audience that are listening to this, like, be honest with yourself, right? Like, if you do a time audit, how much of your time and how much of your, like, attention is actually going towards achieving this goal? And if that number
yeah.
is not high enough, like, it's probably not going to happen.
Okay. So I'll put like a spectrum. I'll put how many hours I put into this, and then I'll put the minimum hours that I think someone would put into this, and then you can decide where you want to be in the spectrum. So I put around 4 hours on the weekdays, and I bump it to around 5 hours on the weekends.
Is that per week?
Yes, that is per week. And that includes all the time you'll spend networking, taking calls, studying behavior, studying technicals, because I really want to invest in banking. And that's something that I feel fun in preparing for all this recruiting because I'm learning new concepts. I'm talking to other people. I'm discovering more things about myself.
Yeah.
So I feel fun when I'm doing that. And beyond that standard time frames, I also take time to practice your behaviors in the shower, and when you're standing in line and you don't have anything to do, then maybe wipe out a couple of technical cards to see, and I'll just quiz my friends on what I think are interesting technical concepts that I have came across. So beyond those hours, I also take like do those little things to make myself a better candidate. And to me, it doesn't really feel like work because all the stuff I mentioned above, and having a mindset where you're constantly improving yourself and you're seeking ways to become better rather than achieving a certain goal or something like that will allow me to keep going and keep everything more sustainable even when I'm putting in a bunch of hours for this.
So basically, you're saying, I mean, it sounds like you spend about, let's call it 10 hours a week, right? Which I think is like, this is actually not like an unreasonable amount. It's actually, I would say, like, for someone who's like serious about getting into investment banking, I think that's like, I would say it's pretty average, right? But I think like the difference for you is like, you have been doing it for over such a long period of time. And so, like, the obviously, like, the longer runway you have, the earlier you start, the more you can kind of spread out your efforts versus like if someone's coming in like very late and they're
Yep.
already like behind in process, then you might have to spend more than 10 hours a week, right? But I think the bigger, the more important thing that you're pointing out is like it's a mindset shift where like you actually enjoyed it. Whereas like I don't think, I think there are very few people out there that actually enjoy the recruiting process or enjoy doing the things you have to do during the recruiting process, because it's very easy for it to feel like a chore, right? It's very
Yeah.
easy, like, oh, I gotta study for interviews. Oh, I gotta get on this networking call. Oh, I gotta send networking emails. Oh, I gotta go to my internship now. Oh my god, I have so much schoolwork, right? So like if you're dreading it, then it's gonna feel a lot harder. Whereas like you just saw this as like, hey, I'm working on myself. I'm like trying to become better. I'm improving as a person as I'm doing this. And because you enjoyed it and you look forward to it, it's like how people say, like, hey, if you actually enjoy your job, then it doesn't feel like work, right? It's kind of the same idea, right? And I think that's really, really good advice, actually. I don't know, like maybe we kind of inadvertently ended up giving that advice, but like I think that's really good advice for people, which is like, hey, you're gonna be doing this work regardless, either way. So you might as well change your mindset and get yourself to enjoy it and look at the positives of it. And that's going to make it just a much easier, much better, much more fun process. And you'll get better results too.
Okay. And
Right.
also, I want to add like the 10 hours per week, it's not doing like peak recruiting season. So that was around, all the time when not a lot of people are busy. But since, November or December of last year until March of this year,
Mm.
I put in around 3 hours per night on the weekdays and
Okay.
then 5 hours on the weekends to do it, to like for all this recording stuff.
You said
So
from November of last year till March. Is that sorry? You cut out a little bit. You said from November of last year until
yes,
March of this
to,
year.
yeah, yeah, I think to the mid-November of last year.
Okay. So it's 3 hours a night on
Yeah,
weeknights, and then
yeah,
5 hours a night on weekends. You still there?
yep,
So you said 3 hours a night on the weeknight and 5 hours a night on the weekends. Is that what you
yep,
said? So
yes, yes,
that's like 25 hours a week then.
yeah, something like that.
Okay.
I don't really count though. I just do it.
Right.
I yeah,
Yeah. You just basically like you're just like spending as much time as you can on it. But yeah, 25 hours a week, I would say that's a lot. Right? Like that's definitely on the high side, right? 10 hours a week, I would say is like maybe like average, but that makes a lot more sense. It's like
yeah,
um but bottom line is it just goes back to what I said. It's like clearly this was your top priority, right? Like this
mm,
is like you made it the most important thing, and that's kind of what it has to be, at least for a period of time. For like the few months that
yeah,
you're recruiting. I mean, for you, November to March, that's basically for like a 4 month period. You basically just basically went all in on recruiting, and that's kind of what you have to do. So
yeah,
anyway, so much goodness here. Thank you so much for sharing all that advice. I guess, guys, for those of you that are still with us, hopefully this inspired you. If you're currently going through the recruiting process, um, and maybe you're struggling with it, maybe you're like Panachai, maybe you are coming in feeling like you need a lot of personalized hands-on help to get to this process. Maybe you don't come from a background where you're the prototypical you don't have like the prototypical profile or you're not the prototypical candidate that banker's looking for, or maybe like you feel like you have imposter syndrome, or you're like that kind of like shy and awkward kid, and you don't know how to kind of like break out of your shell, and you're just looking for help because that investment banking is what you want to do. Then I want to encourage you to reach out to our team, and just let's talk and like help us learn more about your current situation and what it is that you need help with, and then we can at a minimum give you some advice on what we think we would do for you. But you know better yet, like what we will do is we'll try to, if we think we're a good fit to help you, we'll try to give you a customized game plan on what we think needs to happen. And whether you want us to help you implement that game plan, or if you want to go out and just implement it yourself, either or is fine. But no matter what, like, we're here to just provide as much value as possible to you guys. Right. And so if that's something that you guys are interested in, you can go and book this call with our team at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST. So it's wall, stmastermind.com/apply. And we look forward to speaking with you guys. All right. With that said, Pancha, I want to congratulate you again on obviously an amazing offer, and I think can't really think of a better guy for this to happen to, and so it's totally super well deserved. And given everything, like where you come from and everything you had to overcome along the way, and just again how much I've seen you like consistently work on yourself and improve yourself, not just as a candidate but as a person overall. And so I'm just really happy for you, and that you were able to get one of the best offers out there. And huge congrats again. And I look forward to seeing like what you accomplish, what you continue to accomplish going forward, whether it's next summer at your internship and beyond that. So thank you for letting us just play a small part uh, in this amazing journey that you've been on.
yeah. Yeah, all right. Thank you so much for all the time, all the help. And I would like to give a special shout out to Daniel and Johnny, who are coaches in the program.
For
Very
sure.
instrumental to my success, mock interviews, technical questions, all that stuff, even like random questions like what time I should send my emails. Thank you so much for your help. And I wouldn't be here without any of you guys. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I gotta tell them that you gave them the shout out because, in fact, you should tell them yourself if you haven't yet. But Daniel and Johnny are two of our amazing coaches, and yeah, they definitely played an instrumental role in helping Panachai get there. And I feel I'm very happy that we have them on our team. So
Yeah, yeah.
because they've just done so much great work for our students. So yeah, thank you for the kind words. And guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. So that'll be it for this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. And until next time. All right.